Good evening, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend and are having a good weekend. Thank you for joining us for another Inner Hour. Appreciate it. We're continuing tonight with the series called The Nature of Consciousness. So we've had some, what I have thought at least were some interesting discussions and perspectives in the last couple of classes. So hopefully that continues. As usual, I want to just do a little intro, a few intro ideas for tonight. And then again, open it up to anybody who would like to share or ask a question. You don't have to ask a question of me, by the way. It can be for everybody. Um, I'm not the only buddy here. I'm not the only one here who knows something. So anyway, um, I wanted to say two things. We've been talking about a lot about awareness and consciousness and what's the similarity and difference and how do we understand those. So I want to say one thing that hasn't been said yet about that from my perspective. And then I want to introduce kind of a particular focus for tonight that I'd like us to discuss, and we'll see where that goes. So one of the ways of looking at awareness and consciousness, how they're like, how they're different, how they interface, um, which has been helpful to me, may or may not be to you, but hopefully will. Um, and to put it in real simple terms, because like everything, the essence of it's really simple, but when you get into the details of how all of these forms and mechanics actually function, it gets pretty complex. But so essentially, this is the perspective that's helped me. Um, Awareness is essentially the a faculty of the soul. It's the soul that has awareness, not the body, not even the mind. The soul is what has what I refer to as awareness, this greater expansive sense of being, um, generally non-specific, a feeling of connectedness and interrelatedness or oneness. That's a soul faculty. Many traditions, mystical traditions, actually talk about in the biblical story, the Jewish biblical story of creation, that the first light created was the light of awareness. Because if you read that story in Genesis 1, for example, light is created before there's any sun, moons, or heavens. The light's created first. So a lot of mystics interpret that as meaning the light of awareness. Um, and in many traditions, and including my own experience and understanding of it so far, that's one of the primary aspects of soul or soul consciousness is this state of pure awareness, for lack of a better word. And without going too much into that, then contrasting that consciousness, my experience of it, this is not philosophy or any particular tradition, just my experience is consciousness is a result, not of brain chemistry like most physiologists and neurologists and stuff think today. Um, Certainly that is the component in terms of activating things in our body. But my experience is that what we refer to most often as consciousness is a result of the interaction between soul and body. That soul has awareness beyond and outside the body and also within it. It has awareness at all times. It has that, and that's part of its inherent nature or faculty. When the soul connects with the physical body, then it does two things primarily. It animates that body. It's what imbues that body with actual life as opposed to a dead, lifeless, empty form. And it creates consciousness as a result of the interplay between the soul awareness itself and the body. When those two things are connected, there's consciousness. When the soul disconnects from the body, two things happen to the body in reverse. One is it loses all consciousness. It's not like a sleep. I mean, it's we can compare it to a sleep state, but it's not a sleep state. In sleep state, there's still consciousness. There's still dreaming that is connected to the body. There's still a minimal external awareness in terms of temperature in the room and things like that. None of that happens in a dead body. when the soul is disconnected from it. So that consciousness is done in that body when the soul disconnects from it. And the second thing is the body becomes lifeless. So the life energy that has animated and sustained it is now withdrawn. So everything in the body, even down to a cellular level, begins to just slow down until it stops. Heart and brain waves first, but all physiological functions eventually stop, and there's no more cellular activity except that of decomposition. So um, that framing of it has been helpful to me in terms of understanding it, and helpful also in terms of my own experience of the difference between the two. So maybe that'll be of some use to some of you, I hope. Specifically, what I'd like to focus on tonight is, so whatever terminology we use, whether we talk about the soul in us or the indwelling spirit in us or the spark of God in us, traditions and cultures have many, many different ways of trying to describe what's indescribable. But this living essence, this core of who we are, that is with us while we're alive, waking or sleeping, and isn't with this body when we're dead. Um, whether we call that the consciousness, or whether we call that awareness, or whether we call it the soul or the spirit, or however we name it, that thing that I'm trying to get to, that for right now, for lack of spiritual jargon, I'm going to call the core, our core essence. That core essence of us that animates us is the quintessential us, no matter how our bodies change or our beliefs change or our minds change or our interests change. There's a core to us that remains steadfast. That core is what I'm talking about, that many call soul, others call other things. So that core essence that makes you you and me, throughout all the dynamics of our life, all the dramas, all the good times, bad times, all the changing perspectives, all the changing understanding, all the growth, all the failures, all the success, everything we go through in a human life, there's this core essence to us that is us. So when this body dies, what happens to that? So before I open it up again for discussion, just a few key things. Most neurobiologists, or at least many, probably most neurobiologists these days, um, the kind of mainstream opinion, I think, in that field, from what I can tell, is that they believe consciousness is a function of brain chemical activity. And that when the body dies, gradually that entire brain chemical activity stops. And once that stops, there is no more consciousness. There is no more you. It's just nothing. It's done. And many people who consider themselves, for example, atheists, believe that somehow here we are, somehow life exists in this body, in these planets, in this universe. Somehow all that happens by random cosmic chance or accident with no purpose or meaning or intention. It's just sort of a oops. And then when this body's dead, there is nothing else there's no more us. It's just done. So that's one widespread notion in certain circles. And then if you get into the people who are agnostic, they basically think something survives, but they don't know what. They don't know what happens to it, and they don't know where it goes. But they're pretty sure something continues. And then you get into religious or spiritual traditions that teach there is this surviving thing, this soul that survives. Name it what you will. This, I'm going to call it soul for now, or core essence. That survives after our physical death. And then based on the tradition and or religion that you adhere to, there are many differing teachings about then what happens to that. So here's just a few that I've heard over the years, and then I'll be quiet and we'll see what anybody else has to add or ask or share with the group. Just a few that popped into my head, with very little thought. One is nothingness. There's just nothing after this. Death is the end, period. The other is, in the Christian tradition, Jesus comes and takes you and you go to be with Jesus. So that's a very uniquely Christian belief, obviously, but that's a big one because Christians are a large group. Uh, Another one is in not just Christianity, but in other forms like Islam and some forms of Judaism, there's a belief that that core essence, that soul of us, goes to some kind of heaven or heavenly reward or good place, or goes to hell or some kind of punishment or some kind of bad place. But that we go someplace after we die based on, according to the tradition, either on what you believe, like in the Christian tradition, it's all belief centered. So if you believe correctly, you go be with Jesus into heaven and be with God. Or if you believe wrongly, you go to hell forever. Um, and I'm, again, kind of mainstreaming in broad strokes what these traditions teach. Um, Many traditions, including non-religious spiritual traditions, teach that you go through some kind of judgment after death. In some, that judgment is done externally by others, by some review board, or perhaps by God Himself. And in other traditions, that judgment done by you, the soul, that you as a soul now look back on the life you've just finished and now seeing it without the physical filters and limitations of the body, you remember why you came into this body in the first place and what you had hoped and intended to do in this body. And so you take a look at your life and review it and go, oh, I did this. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I did well with this. Oh, I did terrible with that. Oh, this was wonderful. Oh my God, I really screwed this up. And you do a self-evaluation of that life and end up ultimately with you're content with what you did or you're not. And if you're not, then what? Well, some of the answers in some traditions are then that soul that you are re-embodies because it wants another chance. So it comes back into a different life in a different time in a different body, sometimes in similar circumstances, so that you can encounter the same kind of opportunities and lessons and challenges to see if you do better this time. Sometimes in very different circumstances because you have learned a lot. Maybe you suffered a lot in this lifetime. Maybe you were paralyzed. Maybe you were mentally handicapped. Maybe you had a horrific family. Maybe you were born into a drug addict circle. Maybe you had a terrible life. And yet in that life you were steadfast and you learned from it. You didn't just curse it and be upset that that was your life. You learned something from that. And because of that growth, you come back into re-embodiment because you want a better life and you want a chance and you have kind of gone through your own hell, so to speak. And because you've made such good effort, you have this better and very different life situation that you're born into. If all the karma and reincarnation stuff is right, then the opposite side of that coin is that if you've misused this life terribly and been abusive to people and horrible to people and selfish and done terrible things, I don't know what those would be, murder, rape, stealing, hurting people on purpose, whatever it is, you do something really kind of awful, morally awful, that you might come back into a life that you don't want, that is filled with all kinds of difficult challenges or suffering, so that you as a soul get it. You get what you've done to others and go, look, this is what you're now living is the scenario you have caused many others in your other life. And it really ingrains in you a genuine repentance for that and a genuine desire never to do that to people again and to do your best to help people out of those scenarios. So that's kind of the reincarnation idea. Another idea is that you go to what's often called the soul realm or the spiritual realm. Sometimes it's called the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God, which is a purely spiritual dimension, not physical. There's no time and space as such there. There's no life, birth, and death there. There's just ongoing life, ongoing joy, wonder, peace, love, all those things that we would like to have in our life. We would like to have them all the time, but none of us have all the time. That the idea is there is a place, not a literal physical place, but there is a dimension of awareness or a realm of a being in which there's just these pure, wonderful divine attributes. that we get to be part of and be aware of. And we don't have the suffering, the death, the loss, the illnesses, the pain, and so on. So we're in a much better and happier place that is permanently good as opposed to good and evil. Um, Another one is that you find yourself in a completely different reality. You live in a different realm altogether, but still a rather physical one. It has forms and time and space and animal-like creatures and plant-like creatures and human-like creatures, but it's not Earth. It's a different planet, perhaps. It's a different star system, perhaps. This is a big creation. I mean, just the parts of the universe that we can see with our naked eye is huge, and the parts that we now can see with advanced telescopes and satellites and exploratory vehicles, it's just vast beyond comprehension, and that's still a really small part of the entire creation. So this is a big, big place. Um, so some believe that the soul or core of us goes to a different realm of some kind, and has a physical like life with perhaps family and challenges and various things like we do here, but different. And time may flow differently there. There may be different types of life forms there than we experience on Earth and so on. So there's a wide range of ideas about what happens if there's something beyond death for this core of us, this soul of us, then what happens to that survives? There's almost an endless number of ideas about what happens to us afterwards. You may have some, you may not believe others. You may hope for some, but aren't not sure. You may have experienced actually out of the body things. Some of you may have even experienced death. And although I'm not aware of any of you right off the bat that I know of have, and been brought back. And so you kind of have a glimpse of leaving the body and what it's like being disconnected and being on the other side. And might have a personally experiential insight into that. Some of you may have come, not actually died, but come very, very close to dying where you thought you were going to die. And so did your medical team or whoever. And there's definitely changes in your awareness and consciousness when you act, not that you think someday I'm going to die, not that. When you think I'm dying, it does something to you. And there are changes in your understanding and awareness when that happens, whether you actually die and are brought back, or whether you just get really close to that edge and don't cross over, but are rescued, saved, healed, whatever the case is. Um, So those are a bunch of them. And then there's the last two I want to mention. I know this is a lot, but as I said, it's a huge, huge set of beliefs that people wonder about what happens after that. Um, Actually, I said two, but there will be three more. The other one is that, and this is a Christian belief, and I think only Christian belief, I'm pretty sure, is that you go into some kind of sleep, like unconsciousness of like a sleep state, and your body waits until the second coming of Jesus. And at the second coming, the living and the dead who will be raised back to life will all be judged in the final judgment and the final reckoning, where evil is finally punished and not allowed ever to interact with human beings again. And the good souls are rewarded and taken to heaven with Jesus and God to be there forever. But you don't go there immediately after you die. You're in this kind of holding sleep until the second coming event and the final judgment. And then you go wherever you're sent. You have no say in that. And then that's the state. So that's I don't know of any other traditions that look at it quite that way, but that is a way many Christian churches do look at it. Um, and then the second one is that there is life exists. We clearly know life exists, and it exists on a much bigger scale than we can conceive. Just the creation, as I said, is inconceivably vast. And then the creator of that is more inconceivably vast. Um, So, there is this that your soul or your core essence, after disconnecting from this body for the last time in death, just remerges back into that oneness. And the analogies used are often ocean and drops, that the drop goes back into the ocean or the river goes back into the ocean. And the individual drop of life that your soul is merges back into this oneness of being in some undefined, perhaps undefinable way. But there's a confidence that we're not going to be disconnected from life or unconscious or nothing or dead. We're going to be part of this permanent reality of the being of all life, whether you call that God or whatever you might call it. And then you go back into that state of oneness, but not unconsciously. You go back into that state of oneness consciously with that awareness as you go into that state of oneness. And then the third thing and last one is there's a belief that this is beyond us. The reality of what happens after we die is beyond us, so who cares? And why bother worrying about it? It's like you can't figure it out. You won't know until it happens anyway. And if you believe in God, God's got all that under control right now, anyhow. So why even talk about it? Why even investigate it? Why waste time thinking about it? So that's like another way of looking at this question is it's an irrelevant question that you're wasting your time trying to consider. So if you don't want to consider it tonight, then you can watch TV or something else. But that's kind of the question tonight that I would like to discuss is so what is this core essence of us that's with us while we're alive and not when the body's dead? Um, what happens to that? Where does it go? How does that work? Um, and obviously, or maybe not obviously, but to me it's obvious that none of us really um, know know the reality of that in its fullness, but we may have touched into aspects of it through our meditation or through a near death or dying experience. We may have things we believe strongly about it based on what we've been told in our particular faith tradition. We believe this very strongly to the point that we say, well, I know what's going to happen when I die, whatever. I'm going to attain nirvana, or Jesus is going to come and get me, or whatever we've been trained in our faith to believe. We believe it very strongly. So we have lots of different ways of approaching this kind of question, but I sort of like to just open it up and see, number one, what questions people have about it. Not that I'll be able to answer them necessarily, but what kind of questions people have about it, and what kind of understanding people have about it. Like what's your understanding of how that works? And it may or may not relate to all the specific ideas I shared. It might be a totally different idea. So I'm going to be quiet and have a sip of tea and invite people to turn on their cameras or at least their microphones and share either your understanding or ideas you're considering or questions you have that you'd like to put to the group. So Shuli and Hama, go ahead.
It's Nahama.
Hi, Nahama.
There's two things I wanted to say. One, I wanted to share that in Judaism, the reason Jewish people go to somebody who is a Jewish undertaker or whatever it's called
Yeah, yeah.
is that if you had your tonsils out, they're supposed to be saved. And
Yes.
the place you're going to be buried, they keep all these things so
Hmm.
that you're buried intact,
Hmm.
so that when the Messianic age happens and resurrection happens, you can get resurrected.
You can be reassembled.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, works for some people. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know. It's fairly Orthodox Jews that take on that belief, and other
Mhm.
Jews just go, when I'm dead, I'm dead. So you've got the whole
Right.
shebang. Yeah, you've got a whole continuum.
Yes. Yes, for sure. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that which a lot of Americans or non-Jews don't understand, in Israel in particular, some of the holy sites that archaeologists are finding and digging up, they have a whole society over there that collects any bones and remains that they find in those ossuaries or in any of the graves, and they try to identify, if possible, where they are, because they do believe it's a very ultra Orthodox group, but they do believe that, and they do want to save them. And that's also why things like bombs or terrorist things where people are you don't have all their parts is really, I mean, it's upsetting enough, but if you believe that too, that's really, really difficult for people with that perspective.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges that to have that
Hmm.
perspective. And
Hmm.
it's not one I subscribe to.
Right.
It, it to me it's too limiting, and I think it's more um when it developed, it maybe made a lot more sense than it does today.
That's a good
Um,
point. I think so. And actually, when we talk about Jesus and his apostles, that's not something that's usually talked about in relationship to him. But that was a very, very common belief in his circle during that first century in Israel. And there's good evidence that both his family and his apostles believed that and practiced that. I mean, even the garden tomb, the idea of being laid in a tomb and later brought back out, that's because of that belief system that you just described. So,
yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is for me, and I'm 74, and in the last few years, I've had these two major surgeries on
yeah,
my back,
yeah.
different areas that until that time, and I went through a lot of challenging moments, I'll just leave it at that I went through a lot of challenging moments. And so it's not like my life has been easy all
Right.
the time.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I went through these challenging moments, and yet I dreaded something. I just had this sense that something terrible was going to happen. And I feel like I'm living that right now.
Hmm.
Fear went away after the first surgery. Whatever I was supposed to learn had come about.
Yeah.
The circumstances. So now I feel like I'm learning, and I find my understanding, I find my spaciousness growing,
Hmm.
and myself connecting more deeply with the oneness as opposed to my ego and other things. So I feel some major shifts happening in how I see and experience the world. And
Yeah.
that's interesting for me. So I've kind of, this is a place of learning.
Yes. Yes.
It's a place of learning. And that's, I'll just keep it simple like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. The idea of life on Earth as a classroom is really
Mhm.
helpful to me. And it eases many other disturbing things about life on Earth if you look at it that way. At least for me, it does. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah. Thanks, Muhammad. Anybody else? Insights, questions, or comments?
Stephen, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know what's going on the camera. Anyways, all right, we're talking about consciousness.
This is
Okay,
Lance. This is Lance, by the way, in case people have
that's
called in
okay.
and don't know. That's Lance. Hi, Lance.
Post Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Okay, let's go, if we can, please, to organ consciousness.
Okay.
The person dies, is a organ donor, delivers the organ, gets delivered to another person.
Mm.
That other person starts taking on
Hmm.
some attributes of
Hmm.
that person's life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when the body of the donee dies, right? th- Not all of it. How can all of it then die if that consciousness still remains in the organ that is being delivered to another person? This is what prompted this question. Sorry, it didn't come out right, but
No. Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going. That's good.
no, I'm just kind of like, okay, so I'm a one and done. I can say that with absolute certainty. I am a one and done product. I'm born and I'm going to die. And that's all there is to it, right? But then again, uh, who knows? That's all speculation.
Then again, who knows? Yeah, that's right.
That's right. That's the great thing about this journey.
That's right.
But if I donate when I'm a donor, if my organs get donated to somebody,
Hmm.
part of Lance is going to exist in that other person
Hmm.
who my organs get delivered to.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. So
Do any traditions address that issue? Because Rick Hawks's hair turned white when I brought that up to him one day.
traditions, that's a question for somebody else. I don't know if traditions address that. I'm not familiar with that. I know that there are, um, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses, there are traditions that don't like the idea of organ donating because they believe something like that happens. And so they believe it should all be kept intact in the person and not transferred. Um, there are people, for example, who are vegetarian who don't eat meat because they believe that if you take meat in, particularly the blood part of meat, which is one of the reasons Jews won't eat anything with blood in it, that the blood carries the karma, and that's in many, many Eastern writings, and that if you take in animal blood, you're going to start, that's going to start affecting your consciousness to a much lower level and more animalistic, more aggressive, more fearful, and so on, which is why a number of people in the East are vegetarian. Um, the as far as the part of you that goes forward in an organ that you donate, first of all, you're not dead when they donate those organs. They only harvest live organs in a live body, so you're not dead. Um, and you're not. Yes, you are dying, and yes, that death is imminent. But the organs are harvested a second or two before, or a second or two after. So the body itself has enough residual energy that tissue is still alive. They don't harvest dead tissue. Um, and the part that there's genetic things that get transferred when organs move into somebody else's body because the genetic structure in the blood in that organ is still there. So that does affect that. How much is it questionable medically, but it does affect it. And there are a lot of claims, particularly heart transplants, of people that take on more of the personality traits of somebody um, who've donated an organ to them. But from my perspective, that organ, it's kind of like if I lay on my bed for a long time or sit on the couch for a long time and then I get up, I've left an impression there. I'm not there, but I've left the impression there. Our organs get imprinted with our nature. And so that nature carries forward in the organ, but it doesn't affect us. It's like an imprint. There's no residual connection to us after we're out of that body. It's just an imprint left on those organs while they were in our body. And that imprint can transfer to somebody else. But as far as our essence or our soul, not connected to where our organs go, in my experience. But again, what do I know? So, interesting question, though, Lance. As always, interesting questions. Thank you.
That's what happens when you're interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Aaron
Hi,
or
thank you.
sorry. Okay, you go ahead. You're welcome. Thank you. Kaylee or Aaron, whoever, or both. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Um,
Aaron.
so first, I love that you brought that up, Lance, because I have pondered and had that thought for a long time. Especially, I don't know if you've read the book, The Heart's Code. That is a great book to get into to like learn more about, organ transplant and all that kind of stuff. As far as how different personality traits and even language and all that stuff
Yeah,
even
yeah.
develop into it, which is fascinating. But on the topic of like consciousness and soul and like what's next or how does all that work, um, obviously no definitive answer. But I've always remembered Alan Watts, I felt said it in a great way that has stuck with me for years, which he starts off by posing the question, imagine what it would be like to fall asleep and never wake up, which I think most people have had that thought or that question before. But then he asked the question, well, now imagine what it would be like to wake up having never fallen asleep. And essentially, like waking up having never fallen asleep is like when you're born. And so there's real no indicator as to whether we can determine what is after life or death for that matter, because we've never not known non-existence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so then that kind of leads the question, well then yeah, what is next after that? But if you are aware that you've never not existed, then you know that whatever's next is some form of existence. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
So
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I agree. Alan Watts has a great take. If any of you are unfamiliar with Alan Watts, he was a principal figure in developing the Zen movement in the United States, and really, really interesting guy. So if you're not familiar with his books, you check him out. He has some wonderful insights. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that until you said it, Aaron. So thank you. That's
yeah,
brings back good
absolutely.
memories for me from the days I studied Alan. So
Yeah, that was just one of his things when I was studying Buddhism that I came across. I was like, that is really good.
it is
Like that's
good.
that's like a juicy tenderloin right there. Like good piece of knowledge.
Yeah. And what you said, I'm just going to reiterate the one statement you said. We have never known non-existence. So whatever state we're in, we've never known non-existence. So that right there is an indication, as you said, that we can trust that continues. But anyway, thank you. That was lovely. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. Ted, or Eunice.
Actually, this time
This time
it's
it's
Eunice
Eunice, right?
again.
I finally said Ted, and it's just you this time. So you guys are just messing with me, aren't you? Go ahead, dear.
Oh, you figured it out?
Yeah, finally.
Um, what you were just saying about the organ donation,
Yeah.
being done like seconds after.
Hmm.
Uh, my brother did that,
Hmm.
and that is not how it worked.
What did he donate?
Everything they
Oh
would
wow.
take.
Oh wow. Okay, so how did that process work when he did it?
Well, he had a blood clot go to his brain,
Hmm.
which was inoperable. So then the processes of brain swelling and so on,
Hmm.
um, were the cause of death. But before that, he was like comatose and being kept on life support.
Yeah.
When I first went to the ICU unit and I connected with him, he was still connected to his body.
Right.
And there was the part of him that was not.
Hmm.
I went home for a few hours. When I came back, I could tell it was different.
Hmm.
Even though everything, all the machines were still doing their thing, but I could tell he was gone.
Yeah.
But they had to wait for quite some time for a doctor to come in and pronounce him.
Right.
And there's a process where they shut everything off. If there's any attempt of the body to breathe, they're still considered alive.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen, so he was declared. Then they set up all the life support again.
Hmm.
So it was really kind of weird because everything was just the same as it had been a few minutes ago. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and then from that time, because it takes a little while to line everything up
Oh, sure.
for
Especially if they're doing
these
multiple organs
to
as opposed to just one. Yeah.
and I did take some, I don't know, out of thinking about, oh my goodness, all over the place, people are getting that phone call they've been waiting for.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There was a heart available. But there was a very, there was definitely time in there that,
Mhm.
for all of that to happen. So,
So my
I guess
assumption is my assumption from what you just described is that the organs were taken while the life support was after it had been reconnected. Is that correct, or was it then shut off again in
After,
August? Yeah, interesting.
yeah, I mean, because we of course were not present for that once he was declared.
Yeah, yeah,
Most people left. I was the last one because I just kind of wanted to, I don't know, check on where things were on a different level.
right,
But
sure.
everything was reattached, set up again and maintained then until everything was lined up,
Right.
with the people going to do, what kind of harvesting of,
Yeah,
and sending off
yeah,
to
yeah.
what and where. And then some months later, I got a letter unexpectedly that gave the list of this organ went to a person in Ohio who needed this one was, this wasn't used, couldn't be used. And I thought, wow,
Yeah. It's amazing,
the
isn't it?
drama.
Yeah, it is amazing. Um,
But that distinct of when he was still just barely attached yet to his body. The golden bowl had not been broken.
yeah, right, right. Wow. Hmm.
And then when it had,
Hmm.
even though the machines were still what was sustaining everything. So
Mhm.
there is more of a time lag in there
Right, right. Interesting. That's interesting.
than
Yeah, yeah. I've not been present for that happening. Just the only thing I know of it is doctors who perform those things, but I haven't been present at any of those. So, wow, that's awesome.
Ted
Thank,
wanted to say
thank you.
something.
Thank you for sharing that.
Stephen,
Penny, oh, Ted, go ahead. Sorry, I can't see you, but I just heard you. Go ahead. Then we'll get to Penny right after you.
what, while we were talking about this, I had the thought that our bodies have an energy field
Hmm.
runs in and through us, as I understand it.
Mhm.
And my thought was that that organ transfer might have, along with the genetic material you were talking about,
Mhm.
might have had some energy attached to it still.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah,
could have been affecting the recipient.
yeah.
So,
I understand what you're saying. That makes sense to me. Yeah, another little tidbit there. Thank you. Appreciate it. I saw Penny. There, you're still there. Go ahead, Penny. Excuse me. Go ahead, Penny. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, hi, hi.
Well, I'm kind of going along the same lines as Eunice did in that I, I've been doing research on this for a group at the Quaker meeting.
Oh,
So
interesting.
they have a group that helps people have green burials.
Uh,
So anyway, if you're donating your organs, you have to be dead.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it has to be declared dead. So
Oh
either
yeah.
you're brain dead
Oh
or
yeah.
your heart has
Or your heart
stopped.
dead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it has to be done immediately after
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you're declared dead, then they need to harvest the organs. So there are going to be a lot of people who die outside, have a heart attack at home or dead who
Oh
are in a
yeah.
car accident
Oh
or
yeah.
any of
Yeah.
those things that even though they say they want to donate their organs, they're not going to be able to because
Right. There's
they're not in a
too big a
place
lag. Yeah.
to have it done.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to clarify that the person is declared dead before they
Oh
take
yes.
any
Oh
hours.
yes. If I indicated I didn't think that, then that was a miscommunication. Yeah, they're absolutely declared dead. But the part I was trying to emphasize is that the organs and tissues themselves aren't yet. There hasn't been enough time lag for those to
Yes, they're still
actually.
viable.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I probably didn't
So
misspoke, but thank you for both
I
Eunice and you.
I don't know if I've had any consciousness about it. I do know that I have told my powers of attorney that I want to be
Mhm.
consciously go through a death experience. If that's,
Yes,
if I'm on a deathbed, if I'm in a hospital, if I'm in someplace, I'm not killed just instantly somewhere.
right.
I want to consciously experience the death process
Hmm. Hmm.
and be aware of it,
Yeah.
not sedated.
Yep. Yep.
So, anyway, that's all I want to say.
That's cool. It's so good to see you. You look
Thank
lovely.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you do.
Thank
I,
you.
I miss your smiling face around here. So it's nice to see it at least on there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Penny. Um, if Shuli and Hama could hang on just a moment, since Liz hasn't had a chance yet, I'm going to go to her first, and then I'll come back to you guys. So, Liz, go ahead.
Howdy. My question is very long. Um, you were talking about the goldens when the golden something hadn't been broken yet.
Oh, Eunice, yeah, the Golden Bowl. It's called. It's in the Bible. Yeah,
B
I can give
B
you a
O
short
W L.
BOWL. Yes, I can give
Okay.
you a short explanation of that
Sure. Okay,
briefly.
thank you.
But
Sure.
is that the question? Because that was a pretty short one.
That is it. I just
Oh,
my
yay. Well,
my
that's a short one.
sometimes when people talk, part of the word doesn't come through. So I'm
Right.
like the golden what?
Yeah, especially if you
So,
haven't heard the term, it's not something you would
yeah.
put together necessarily. So in the Bible, there's and in other literature too, but both of these terms do appear in the Bible. There's a term called the silver cord. There's another
Yeah.
term called the golden bowl, and it's also in a lot of other mystical literature, primarily from the Mid East region over different centuries. Um, Essentially, the golden bowl, this again, very, very simplistic because we don't have time to get into depth with this tonight. But if you like to, you can write me and I can give you a longer explanation. But essentially, when the soul is very present with the body, particularly if the person is conscious, if they're aware of their own soul, if they identify themselves as that soul, it opens up more of the floodgates and more of that spiritual presence is with them at the physical level. It's perceived by people with spiritual vision as a kind of a golden bowl, or that's why saints are always painted with this golden. It's the saints are not painted with a green circle around their head or a purple circle around their head or a chartreuse circle around. They're painted with a gold circle around their head. That golden radiance symbolizes the soul's connection to that body. And that circular spherical radiance was referred to as the golden bowl because, in those days, that's kind of what they had. They had these bowls that looked like a bowl. And the second thing is that as that connection between the soul and body is gradually broken in a natural death process, as Penny was talking about, not a violent death process or an accidental death process, but a natural, uninterrupted death process, this golden radiance begins to recede, and there is from that a shimmery, silvery, kind of iridescent looking stream of energy that's called the silver cord from that bowl that anchors into the head region of the physical form. And you can't really describe where it anchors in because it actually changes from person to person, but typically in the forehead region or the crown region or even the medulla oblongata region in the back, and it connects to the physical body there. That's like the electrical cable that connects your lamp to your electrical box. So the soul, as I said before, animating the body, the soul being the power source for the body, that cable is the connecting link that enables the life energy to transmit from the soul to the body. Also allows other things to transmit, which is a bigger story. But it allows things to transmit from the soul into the body, most especially the animating energy. As the soul begins to recede, that silvery strand of energy that connects, literally, it's kind of like a taffy pull. I mean, it literally looks like that. And it gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it eventually snaps. And there is no more cable connecting it to the body anymore. And that's the actual spiritual death of the body. and then very shortly after that, usually in this order, sometimes not, the heart stops, then the brainwave activity stops. But there's a gradual withdrawal of the soul, and the golden bowl being broken means that connection is broken, or the silver cord being severed means that energy stream is no longer connected, so the body cannot reanimate. If you were in a coma, for example, and your soul was far away, but still animating the body, you could still be resuscitated and brought back into the body. But if that silver strand breaks, then your medical science can't do anything to reestablish that at this point. You're dead. But that's a spiritual perspective in esoteric literature, but it is in the Bible. But I mean, not that explanation, but both of those terms are in the Bible, talking about the death process and also the, well, anyway, they're both there. If you want to know more, email me and I'll be glad to share. But that's an interesting question, Liz. Thanks.
Silver cord I'd heard, but not golden bowl. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Yeah. So back to Shuli and or Nahama.
It's me, Uncle Stephen.
Hello.
Before I go, because I have two things, but of course my main thing is to give Auntie her weather update.
Good, good. She was just talking about getting a weather update from you today at church. So
Yes, well, she'll be grumbling because it's been in well, today was actually in the upper 60s, not 70, but it's supposed to be in the 70s this week, maybe even 80s next week. We'll see.
And keep that right where it is.
don't send it up here.
That's why I say you grumble. But on the other side, you will be happy. You'll be purring because we had a very scary thunderstorm
Oh,
at lunchtime. So we did not go out and do our usual adult ed. We did a conference call type, calling
Oh, yeah.
everyone on the phone and doing it that way. And we all had our own books and stuff.
cool.
Because it was
did-
going to pour buckets. Huh?
Did the conference call help take your mind kind of off of the storm anxiety at all or not really?
For the most part, until it started
Okay.
thundering.
Good. Well, yeah.
But the bad part was, of course, we had high winds and we also got a tornado watch, which been there, done that. I do not want to go through with that again.
No, I'm with you on that. Been there, done that too. Don't want to do it again.
Those.
Yeah.
And we did have over an inch of rain, so which we need because we're in a drought.
Okay.
So okay,
Or
so
comment.
no. Two comments, two things. One, one of our neighbors recently died that we didn't at first hear about. It was maybe at most a month ago, 3 weeks to a month ago. He ultimately died of sepsis,
Oh,
but he was also waiting on, wasn't it a liver transplant?
yeah.
And unfortunately, from what my neighbor told me, he was that close.
Oh, no.
Like hours, like 24 hours just before they were going to get it, his body shut down.
Wow.
All the organs just stopped working.
Yeah.
And he was younger than mommy. Well, actually younger than both of you, but yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
'Cause they're
That's
only
hard
2
to
days
do, you know.
apart.
Yeah. Yeah. The longer I go, it doesn't get hard to be younger than me. It's pretty simple to be younger than me. Yeah.
By 2 days.
You're
they
a
always
baby.
count. I was waiting
That's
for
right.
that.
That's right. Yeah.
And the other thing, because that's, talking about organs made me think about that. But the other thing, gonna go to mythology. So Aaron should hopefully be happy about this one since he's also a reader and knows his fantasy. Thank goodness. So this is with one of my favorites. Oh, and besides that, with the Jewish part, I always think of when we're waiting for the world to come, for the Messianic time, I always think that we're in a asphodel form. We're in a limbo stage, just waiting in our soul.
Yeah.
But the other one that I really love, the mythology on reincarnation,
Mhm.
Mom's heard this a dozen times, has to do with the Inuits
you would know them as Eskimos.
Right. Mhm.
I really love their tradition of how even if so someone dies in one tribe and there's a rival, in the rival tribes, that if one person from one tribe goes, dies, and then there's a baby being born, that soul will go into that baby.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if someone from the opposite tribe, has death, and that, so they believe that no matter what, that soul will latch onto that baby, and like even the person on the other tribe will recognize that soul in that person, even if they're on opposite sides.
Wow. That's interesting. I was not aware of that part in the Inuit tradition. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's an interesting movie I want it called. I'm trying to remember. I think it's excuse whatever. I literally called. I think Running Man or Naked Running Man or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it mentions that
Interesting.
whole
Yeah,
mythology.
thank you for sharing that. I like learning things like that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you, dear.
Sure.
All righty. Anybody else? We have a couple minutes left, just a couple, but anybody else have something you'd like to share? All righty.
Stephen?
Yeah, Ted, go
Stephen.
ahead. Ted, go ahead.
Yeah. It struck me that, we're talking about not having any proof per se of what happens afterwards, but actually there are a number of paranormal things that suggest, the people who haven't moved on, are existing as something.
Hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call them.
You on my end, I don't know if this was true for everybody, but the last 3 or 4 words you just said on my speaker cut out. So could you say the last thing you said again?
Yeah, they're these people who have not moved on, even though they've died.
Mhm.
They're existing, perhaps you could call them ghosts or
Mhm.
phantoms or what,
Mhm.
but they're interacting with people.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now,
That's something we haven't really covered in any of the things we've just discussed. But yeah, ghosts are talked about in every tradition that I've ever studied in around the world. It's a real common. The understanding of that varies quite a bit, but the experience of ghosts is a really common experience all over the world. Yeah. Mhm. And one of the ideas in the West is what you just said. They haven't moved on. For whatever reason, there's something unresolved about the life they left, and they're still hanging around because they're unwilling to let go, or because they want to see something resolved, or because they want to check on something, but that they're still around. And yeah, that's a whole interesting topic in itself, actually, is uh, which yeah, the idea of ghosts is relates to all this. And then, of course, if you consider the possibility that there might be other sentient life forms on other planets or in other star systems or in other places in the universe, um, whether you call them aliens or, UFO people or star people or whatever you call them. If you entertain the notion that there's other life elsewhere besides on Earth, then that interplays into this whole thing too. What happens to them when they die? Um, and how does all that work? So it's a big field for sure, and it's mostly, despite whatever we have learned, there's, at least for me, there's infinitely more that I don't know than I do know about all of that. But it's intriguing, and it's something that all religious traditions deal with, the idea of what is life, what is death, what is before life, what is after death, what is it that goes through life and death. Those are, whether it's mythologies, Norse mythology or Druidic mythology or Native American mythology or any of the mythologies or any of the religious traditions. The line, by the way, between mythology and religious teaching or religious tradition is much thinner than many religions would like to think. There's a lot of mythology in almost all religions. But anyway, that's a really intriguing question that all cultures have addressed. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I'll say this and we'll wrap up. If this is a topic of any interest to you at all, in terms of pursuing it more on your own, if you are not familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, there's something in Tibetan that's called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Also in ancient Egypt, there's something called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. They're quite different cultures, clearly, but there's very similar teachings in both. And it's two of the cultures that have tried to investigate what happens to our consciousness, to our core, to our soul. What happens to that after death and or between lives? And they have this, particularly the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is much more explicit, is very explicit about the stages of dying, what the person dying experiences, and then what the external physiological symptoms of that are for people monitoring them as they die, and then what the soul who dies goes through, what happens first after they die, what happens immediately in the millisecond after they die, what happens after that, and what array of things are possible and what you can choose and what occurs. It's called the Bardo state, which means in between. And there's a tremendous amount written about, whether you believe it or not, it's another issue, of course, but a tremendous amount written about that by ancient Tibetan lamas who claimed to have gone through these things themselves through their own death, and or to have spiritually witnessed that as people are dying, and they, through their spiritual sight, they've witnessed what these things are and they've written about it. It's quite specific. So if that's of any interest and you're not familiar with it, there are now some really good translations into English of the it's called the Bardo Thudal, and it's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, basically. James, I just saw you pop on there, brother. You want to say something before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah, I discovered that book months ago and I haven't bought it. And now that you mention it, I just bought it. So that was the impetus I needed. 'Cause I've
There
been
you go.
for a
Let me
very-
know when you get a chance to look through a little bit. Let me know some of your, what you think of it.
Definitely, I will definitely let you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it, James. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I love our discussions. I love this group. Means a lot to me that you show up and participate, and so thank you. So let's just take a brief moment to pause and come back into that inner place of stillness and calm, and just begin to give ourselves let go of all the mental ponderings and all the emotional feelings that may be connected with certain ideas or not, and just kind of come back to rest again in that Spirit of God that is within us and among us, however we understand it, whatever we call it. And just begin to rest in that Spirit and trust in that Spirit. And while it may not be in our power to control our journey, it is within our power to decide whether to appreciate it or not. So may this week be a week of appreciating your own journey and appreciating and supporting the journey of those around you. I definitely feel appreciation for your support in my journey. So thank you very much. Love you all. Have a great week.